passage, the agenda stands. We'll start through that. The first thing, I guess the largest single item on the agenda is the presentation of the proposed fiscal year 2013-2014 budget by the county manager. Just to let the public know how this process works. We meet or this board at least has met in my tenure. We've met in January and had a board workshop. We have some general discussions. No budget figures are set because the budget doesn't start on July 1. We have general discussion about items that are important to us for the coming year. Part of that discussion includes the budget. And at that time, shortly after that, the county manager with department heads and going through each one of those line item by line item, and we indicated to the county manager at our board retreat in January that we would not consider a tax increase, that we wanted to live within our current means, and we asked him to come back to the budget. We have not seen the budget. This is the first time he has met with his department heads, and now he's come back to us to present the budget for the first time. And what we do after this, we take this under consideration, and then we will have several budget workshops, we call, where we will actually go through the budget. We will have time, but like I say, this you saw him hand these budgets. It's rather thick, rather complicated, so we have some time to go through it, and then we will meet and discuss items, and then at the end we will have to vote whether to accept his budget or not. Is that a fair assessment of where we are, Jack? We're close. Okay. So if you would pull that mic up where they can hear you.
Come on over here. Well, this works not.
And so Jack is going to take.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
My wife says I talk too loud anyway, so I may not need that microphone. Mr. Chairman, anytime you're ready.
Okay. Go right ahead.
I'll just sit right now. I'm going to have to get up and try to work this computer in a few minutes if I can get those pictures to go up. But I don't have a lot of PowerPoint slides, just a few. That's as far as it goes. Oh, there you go. But anyway, Chairman is correct in how that budget process works. And I've been doing this for quite a long time. But it's required by the North Carolina General Statutes, the Budget and Fiscal Control Act, that the county manager is designated as the budget officer for the county, and as such must present a balanced budget by June 1st each year. We've been in the past trying to get this done as early in April or in May as we can. We had originally scheduled to try to do this last Tuesday, but because of some conflicts, we're doing it today. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I think this is probably the first time in history that the annual county budget has been presented in the Highlands, North Carolina. It's usually done down at the courthouse, so I feel pretty safe to say that it's never been presented up here. But we're glad to be here. And as the Mayor mentioned earlier, we do have a good working relationship with the towns, and we appreciate that. We appreciate the hospitality and providing this place for us tonight. I'll go through this. It may take a little while, but I'll try to go through as briefly as I can and try to point out some of the highlights of the proposed budget. I will say that the budget will be on the website tomorrow. There's probably a couple of typographical errors that need to be corrected, but the entire budget, proposed budget, will be on the county website tomorrow. We'll also have a copy of it here at the library. One in Franklin, the public library down there, one in the finance department's office, and one in my office, and I think we'll have one in Annahela as well. But it's available through a variety of ways for people to look at that, and we'd encourage people to do that. If you have any particular questions about it, feel free to let us know. We'll try to answer those, and I'll start through that now with your permission.
Yes.
Macon County continues to be in a pretty strong, solid financial position compared to a lot of the counties in North Carolina. We have 100 counties altogether. We still have the lowest ad valorem tax rate, and if you saw one of the local newspapers recently, you saw a little kind of a cartoon in there with me and the county manager from Jackson County with there's not really a rivalry. The county tax rate in Macon County is arrived at because that's what it takes to provide the services that the county provides. And Mr. Wood and I kid about that from time to time, but we do have the lowest tax rate right now in North Carolina, 27.9 cents per $100 of value. And our fund balance remains fairly strong and healthy at this point. Having a good fund balance really provides a high degree of financial security in terms of being prepared for unexpected emergencies or shortfalls in revenue. And a healthy fund balance, cooperative, conservative approach to budgeting, I think, along with our consistent tax collection, which is fairly high, all that contributes to Macon County's A+ rating, bond rating we have. That was increased last year from an A to an A+, and we're still maintaining that. The past year has been remarkable in terms of Macon County and the accomplishments that have been undertaken and accomplished over the last 12 months, especially in this area of economic distress, not only in our state but throughout the nation. I think we're very pleased that the record will show that the county has been vigilant in its approach to what I call responsible financial planning while making needed improvements and making investments in the future of our county for all of our citizens. I sincerely believe this is what is expected if we are to be good stewards of the public trust. I'll take time in the budget message to emphasize both some highlights of the current year and some challenges that we may be facing in the year to come. For the current year, we've been able to complete the new K-4 Howell Elementary School. That school was finished and opened on time at a cost of approximately $11.3 million. A little bit more than that when you add the engineering and architectural fees and so forth. But it actually came out to about $118 a square foot, and we financed that with qualified school construction bonds with a net interest rate of about 0.48% over a 17-year period. We're glad to be able to get that project underway and in operation, and it's up and running now. We were able to replace the windows in the newly renovated Nantahala School. We just did a $1.8 million renovation of that school last year. We were able to save a little bit of money from that project, along with some other county funds and some school board participation. We were able to go ahead not only do that renovation, but also replace all the windows in that school. And I think it was very, very much needed. Of course, we're doing the construction renovation, $1.5 million on the Highlands K-12 school. That's started, and we hope we'll have that complete by the time school starts this year. This is the first time I can remember in a long time the kids got out in actually 3 full months. And so we've got an opportunity to get all this work done before school starts, and so we can avoid some disruption there. We're financing that project with what they call QZAB, which is Qualified Zone Academy bonds. And the good thing about that particular $1.5 million loan is that it's going to be at 0% interest. So we're fortunate in that respect. The county has coordinated funding and administration of the Swiss Colony Water Project for the town of Franklin. The cost of that part of the project about $750,000, and that will be completed this month. That was part of an original Highway 28 North Riverbend water project that the county undertook several years ago at a cost of about $1.8 million. And this entire system, once it is completed and signed off, will be turned over to the town of Franklin for maintenance and operations. Macon County funded 10% match to a $2 million Macon County Airport apron renewal project this year. That's been completed, and the county airport is now in line for additional FAA funding for next fiscal year, which would actually go toward widening the existing runway. We've completed the renovation of the new sheriff's office. I think the sheriff will agree it's a little bit better than what he had to deal with before. And that was completed and moved into, it's on Palmer Street if you haven't been by there. Also in the same building is a new office for our driver's license, DMV office for the driver's license in the same building with the sheriff's office. The Barrett building, which we sometimes call the old post office, we had a renovation there that was completed this past year, and now we have a state-of-the-art emergency communications center on the top floor of that building. with all new modern equipment. And we have an elevator in that building now that services all 3 floors. That is probably one of the most well-built buildings in the county. And if it's ever intact, that's where you want to go, because the walls are about 2 feet thick. We're glad to get that project finished this year. Our priority has been also public safety and making sure that the equipment was up to date. And so this past year's budget, we did actually purchase 6 new patrol cars for the sheriff's office, 2 ambulances, and 12 defibrillator monitor machines for the EMS service. And along with that purchase, we added 3 auto-pulse machines, 1 for each unit, 1 in Highlands, 1 in Franklin, and 1 in Nantahala. Thanks to the efforts of our financial, we're able to refinance some existing long-term debt for the county, and we're saving by that refinancing somewhere in excess of $2.7 million in interest charges alone. So we think that's a real savings for the county. We're able to provide $1.5 million to the Macon County school system that has enabled them to upgrade their current information technology equipment, and we're glad to be able to do that. And part of the agenda tonight will include authorization of the board to go ahead and award a contract for some computers on that project. We have just completed renovating the pool house and the swimming pool at the Macon County Recreation Park. I think those renovations make it safe, and modern, and probably a more family-friendly facility. That opens this month. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chairman, I believe this weekend, that facility will be open to the public. The county was also able to purchase a 48-acre tract known as the Parker Meadows property, which in time will be developed into a state-of-the-art ballpark and recreation facility containing 8 proposed baseball, softball fields, along with some other amenities. Our economic development efforts are paying off with increased activity in our business development center. We have new prospects for new job creation there. We're extremely fortunate to be able to help Tricorn International acquire and establish a new business here known as Franklin Tubular Products. They replaced Whitman, who was in Franklin. I think our EDC director, our Economic Development Commission, and both the town of Franklin and Macon County commissioners are to be thanked because they all contribute to making this project a success. We have a new Macon County Health Department dental clinic up and running now, and we are finally completing the long-awaited renovation to the Holly Springs Community Building. If you've ever been out the chance to look at that, that's been needed for quite some time. On the revenue side of the budget, growth in the tax base has been minimal. It's been that way for several years now. Our total gross countywide is probably less than 1%. Sales tax have begun to pick up a little bit. We've seen about a 2% increase in our sales tax. And we've been able to manage pretty effectively, I think, with these fiscal challenges, and we continue to hope for an improved economy next year. We started this process on the budget this year with a mid-year retreat work session with the Board of Commissioners. And it was a consensus of the board at that time that we would construct the budget without an adjustment to the property tax rate. And so the budget that we're presenting tonight meets that objective. As the chairman said, we've met with the department heads, reviewed their budgets, and come up with some recommendations. And tonight we're presenting those recommendations in the form of a balanced budget. And after it's presented tonight, the board will schedule probably several work sessions to review the budget in detail. And we're open to have a public hearing on a proposed budget with any modifications to that on June the 11th at 6 p.m. in the courthouse. Hopefully by June 18th, we'll be able to adopt a budget for the next fiscal year, which begins July 1st. Counties have to operate on a balanced budget. We don't have any choice in the matter, and so our budget has to be effective and adopted and in effect by July the 1st of each year. We've got some graphs. I'm going to try to show these if I get this computer to work. once each year to give you a visual idea of what the budget looks like in its entirety. And if it comes up, we'll be able to see that. I'm not sure. Is it turned on?
Yes, it is now.
Okay.
There it goes. Hopefully that'll come into a little bit better focus. But in the proposed budget, we're looking at revenues, and you see there on that pie graph that a big chunk of our revenue for the county budget comes from tax collections. About 56.5% come from tax collections on real and personal property, including vehicles. Another big source of revenue, one of the largest sources of revenue, is our sales tax, and we get a little over 12.5% from that source. Another large area that we get is what we call intergovernmental revenues. Those intergovernmental revenues are revenues that primarily come from the state or federal government. And those are usually earmarked for certain specific things within the budget. When you're looking at the entire budget, on the county budget, it's probably about 2/3 of it is mandated by either the state or federal government. So we have a little bit of discretion on about 1/3 of it. But this is where the money comes from. We do have a fund balance appropriation of $1.6 million, which is about 3.5% of the budget. And we do collect some money on service fees and on investments. I looked back at the budget earlier today, about 5 or 6 years ago, and we were collecting somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million a year in interest on investments. As you can see by this chart, it's down to about $51,000. You just can't earn much money. I'm sure Bob's facing the same thing with town highways.
Having 12-year-old students in the audience that can help us with this. They can do it. I have about 12 for that.
Give there a couple of kids.
There we go. Oh, there we go.
Give you an idea about property taxes. Said about a little over half of the revenue it takes to actually fund the county budget is property taxes. Our total real and personal property value, as you see from the chart, is a little over $9 billion, $9,088 million. Motor vehicles in the county account for about $277 million. So the total estimated value of all taxable property in Macon County is $9,365 million. At the current tax rate of 27.9 cents, which is the same as the proposed budget, we're seeing a tax levy of $24,523,859. Now, we don't collect 100% of the money every year, so you'll see that 96.72% is actually what our annual collection rate is, right at 97%, which is good, but it's not 100%. Our estimated total levy then is $25,172,000. 46. It's just to kind of keep it in mind. 1 penny on the tax rate right now with the tax base that we have brings in $902,320. So where's the money go? It goes to several places on there. You can see the breakdown. Public safety accounts for about 24%. That includes sheriff, jail, EMS, all those things that go with public safety. Human services, both the health department, social services, mental health, all those programs associated with human services. Education is 18% of this chart. The other thing that's a little bit deceiving is debt service is 8%. Most of the debt services, I'll show you a little bit later, is for school projects. So most of that debt service, along with our regular appropriation for education, most of that goes together. General government, which is what most people think of when they think of the county government, is only 14% of the total budget. Looking at our budget over the past 5 years, you can see that in 2009-10, the budget was just at $42 million, and the proposed budget for next year is $46,643,716. I thought it was interesting. I went back and looked at the fiscal year 8-9 budget, and the total budget that was approved that year was $46,723,000. So we're within $100,000 of what the budget was 6 years ago. So it's had its ups and downs, its spikes and so forth, but it's fairly flat. Some things that people may not be aware of is that all the money to fund some of the county operations is not all 100% county money. And for example, in the health department, the county puts in about 57% of the total cost of operating the health department and the health department services. The other 43% comes from state service, state or federal revenues, or in some cases fees. Social services is very much the same, only more dramatic. You can see that social services is a huge budget, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 or $5 million. But 73% of the social services budget is from the federal government and the state government to a smaller degree. The county only puts in 27% of the cost to operate the entire Department of Social Services. As I mentioned, we were talking about debt. We have outstanding debt now somewhere around $56 million. If you're looking at that pie graph, you'll see that the county debt outside of schools is about 13%. 87% of our current debt is for school, new schools and school-related improvements. The fund balance has changed a little bit from year to year. You'll see back in 2007, 2008, these are the end of the fiscal year, by the way. The fund balance was $15,199,000, or about 35% of next year's budget. The next year, the fund balance went down to $14.7 million, and was about 33.8% of the budget. Last year, it was $14,162,000, or around 34-35%. In 2010-11, our fund balance went up to $16,500,000, which is about 41%, but it's come back down since then. You can see that the total budget in 2011-12, which is not the current year, but the year before this, was around 37.67% of the operating budget. With appropriations made from the fund balance this year, we expect probably that the fund balance on June 30th this year will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 35%. 35% of the operating budget of the county. What that means is we have enough money in fund balance at 25% to cover the total cost of operations for all the county programs for 3 months. We have a little bit more than that at 35%. And local government commission requires us to keep at least 8%. And 8% is basically 1 month's worth of expenditures. And no county our size would keep only 1 month's worth of expenditures in their account. And so the county commission several years ago made the decision to set our fund balance at 25%, which would give us at least 3 months worth of operating revenues. Because the problem we have is that the county money doesn't come in weekly, monthly sums. It comes in at different times of the year. When the tax bills go out, right before the tax bills go delinquent, and once a month when the sales tax comes in and so forth. So we have to have monthly cash flow. That's one of the main reasons you need to have a good, strong fund balance, and there are always emergencies and things like that that pop up that you hadn't counted on, and that's a safety net for the county. In the budget is also, and I won't go through all those, but we have an explanation of all our revenue and expenditure categories, and if there's any question about that, we'd be glad to answer. And we also have the same information for our expenditures to explain what those are in the budget. As I was talking about fund balance available and appropriated, that terminology gets kicked around from time to time. We take a few minutes to try to address that. We try to maintain a stable fund balance that meets that goal of keeping at least 25% in the fund balance, 25% of our operating budget in fund balance. And this is vitally important in order to keep Macon County financially prepared and fiscally sound. Our policy is and should always be only to appropriate fund balance to cover capital or one-time discretionary expenses, not to use it for regular continuing operational expenses. If you do that, your fund balance just won't be there in a short period of time. So we usually earmark that for specific items that are either capital or one-time discretionary expenses. So if we had to cut those out, we could do that and continue to operate for the most part. Fund balance available is a statutory concept that describes the amount of funds that local governments have that are available to be appropriated in the coming year. It's essential that for ad valorem tax levying units like municipalities and counties, that they maintain an adequate amount of fund balance available to meet their needs, as I said, in terms of cash flow, and also when there are revenue cycles and when outflows exceed inflows. And this ensures that the unit can meet their current obligations and prevent the county or the unit from experiencing some cash flow difficulties. The Local Government Commission, as I mentioned, requires that on June 30th each year, which is the end of our fiscal year, that you maintain at least an 8% of prior year's expenditures as a fund balance. North Carolina counties have historically maintained fund balance levels well above the 8% mark. It's a cushion against unexpected expenditures, emergencies, or perhaps declines in revenues. Bond rating agencies reinforce the notion that fund balance should be above 8% and that higher levels are required for sound financial management. The higher balance is often necessary because the available fund balance many times includes restricted amounts such as sales tax that is restricted, for example, for school capital outlay or funds that are set aside for debt service. If you're using the 8% fund balance as a target rather than as an absolute minimum, that may have devastating effects on the fiscal health of North Carolina counties. Across the state, the average fund balance amounts maintained by counties has been fairly consistent throughout this economic turndown. Counties have responded to the economic turndown by reducing their budgets and to avoid depleting their fund balance. Many counties have actually reduced expenditures through layoffs, furloughs, and service reductions. In addition, some counties have actually had to raise taxes and fees in order to maintain their financial stability. The boards have made, their boards have made some difficult choices to maintain good fiscal health in North Carolina. Local governments seek to achieve. North Carolina has a good reputation for good, sound financial management. That's why our state's bond rating is one of the highest in the country. Maintaining a strong fund balance is a prudent course for counties, especially during these uncertain economic times. Depleting the fund balance could result in the county being forced to raise property taxes in order to meet essential or vital needs of our citizens. Some of the other highlights in the proposed budget, one question that always pops up is tax assessment, tax reevaluation. I know that's a hot topic probably up here because a lot of the tax base in Macon County comes from the Highlands area, and everybody knows that. We appreciate that. But property reevaluation process is now underway. It must be completed on the books by January 2015. Much of this work is going to be accomplished over the next 12 to 18 months. And so there'll be a lot more activity this next year than you've seen so far. Beginning July 1st this year, there's going to be a new process in place by the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles. And it's going to require that your property taxes, both city and county, be paid at the time you renew your license plate. North Carolina is one of the last county, one of the last states in the nation to do this, but that's effective this coming July. And obviously, that's going to take some time to adjust to. It's going to be that eventually local governments will collect basically 100% of the property taxes on their automobiles. Right now, ours is below 90%. If you look at our charts, we're probably collecting somewhere around 84, 85% each year of the taxes due on automobiles. In regard to information technology, computers and so forth, the proposed budget reflects our need to expand our capabilities to retrieve and retain additional data associated with all of our county departments. This means we need to continue to invest in new hardware and new software accordingly. Public safety continues to be a top priority in the county budget with the acquisition this year in the proposed budget of 2 new ambulances for our EMS service and 5 new patrol vehicles for the sheriff's office. There are no new county positions included in the proposed budget. We have allowed some funds in the capital outlay budget for the schools, for some related school safety improvements, and we had actually in the budget process requests for 16 new positions about a variety of departments, but we have not included any of them in the proposed budget due to limited resources this year. Doesn't mean we don't need them, it just means that we just don't have the money to fund them. We've been notified also that the airport has been approved for additional FAA funding, as I mentioned earlier, and that will require a local match. When that's official, that'll be brought to the county commissioners, and they'll have to then make a decision on the local funding for that airport improvement project out there, but that's not in this budget either. The county school project that was started on this past year has been separated from the economic development budget in order to better identify the expenditures related to that particular project. The budget does include a new heating and cooling system for that building. The new system will reduce the energy costs there, and we expect to see a payback in 2 to 3 years, depending on how much higher fuel prices go. The higher the fuel price goes, the sooner it's going to pay back. But the system that was there was antiquated and very inefficient, so we're prepared to replace that in the coming year. Our transit system budget, we had a separate item for elderly and handicapped transportation in the past. That's been rolled into the regular operational budget for the transit department next year. Our soil conservation service, if you see a big jump in that, it's not because they get a lot of extra money, but they did get a grant from Duke Power this year, $37,050, and that'll be expended in next year's budget, but will not have a dramatic effect on their continuing operation. The health department budget includes the regional transformation grant, which is a grant that our health department is coordinating for all the western counties. This year's budget accounts for $570,000, and that money, that's not all coming to Macon County. It's not all going to be in the health department. We're coordinating that. We have to show it as a revenue and expense, and that money will be a pass-through and will have a permanent effect on the health department budget. There is a small contribution to the community care clinic. We did have a request for $50,000, and in the recommended budget, we're beginning with an amount of $10,000. The social services budget contains $1,460,000 in pass-through funds for daycare payments for providers in Macon County. That used to be paid directly by the state government. Last year, they decided to send the money through the county. The county paid those expenses. That does not increase our revenue, does not increase anything but our work in making sure that those daycare facilities get that money. So it looks like our budget was inflated by almost $1.5 million, but that's actually just state pass-through funds that we have to be responsible for. It should be pointed out that the grants for the health and the social services account amount to a little over $2 million. And without the transformation grant and the pass-through money for the daycare operations, our overall budget would be considerably less. Our Montana Regional Library, it operates our library both in Franklin and here in the Highlands. library system has been suffering several years without any increase, and we do have a 3.15% increase in funding for the regional library system for our Macon County libraries here. In addition to a regular annual appropriation for recreation in Highlands, which has been at $495,000 each year for the last several years, the proposed budget does include $250,000, which will be matched by the town of Highlands, which will represent a joint effort between the county and the town to replace the swimming pool that needs it really bad. Mr. Fry, I'm sure you would agree with that. The big thing in the budget, education, and I'm sure a lot of folks here tonight are wondering what's going to happen with the education budget for this next year. In the past 5 years, Macon County has made an enormous commitment to our local education system in terms of capital needs, and that's demonstrated in this budget report, showing that the capital improvements for East Franklin, at the intermediate school, property purchase for the intermediate school, renovation of Nantahala, the Iowa Valley School, Franklin High School improvements, Highlands School improvements, information technology for the schools, and this Highlands renovation. In the past 5 years, this is going to account for over $45.5 million in investment in the county for school facilities. I think that speaks well for the board in making sure that facilities are there. The primary responsibility of facilities is the county's primary responsibility for operating schools really belongs to the state. Our local school system is facing a crisis this year in terms of our current operational expenses. The primary responsibility, as I said, of counties is to provide adequate school facilities, and the primary responsibility for the state is to fund the operational expenses of those schools. Over the past couple of years, the school system has tried to maintain an operational level created by stimulus funding and what I would call erratic state funding. This year's county funding recommendation in the proposed budget is a 3% increase in current expense and a capital outlay appropriation of $199,035. The fiscal year 13-14 current expense, capital outlay, solid waste, and teacher supplement in total in the budget proposed is $7,819,986. The debt for our public school debt is $5,660,676. Looking at the total general fund budget, as I mentioned earlier, $46.6 million. School funding actually represents right at 29% of our total county budget. We collect about $25.4 million in property taxes. As a percent of property taxes, the amount that the county is currently putting in the proposed budget, equating to the property taxes about 53 cents out of every tax dollar. So we did a little chart, and I don't have it on overhead, but it's available in the budget showing school funding from 2007 up to 2013. And you'd see when you look at this that the 07-08 county appropriation to Macon County schools was just a little over $6 million, $6,010,000. The total, and then the school actually appropriated that year about $239,000 along with the county funds and other revenues for a total expenditure of a little over $8.2 million. And they had a fund balance at that time of $1.6 million. In 09, the county appropriated a $900,000 increase in the school current expense budget from 07-08 to 08-09, and that appropriation was $6,911,000. That, along with other funds, gave total revenues of $8.8 million, and our current expense that year was about $8.35 million. So the school was able to increase their fund balance by $486,000 that year for a total of $2,118,000. And 09-10, the same appropriation was from the county at $6.9 million. And that year, the school was able to increased their fund balance by $900,000 for a total of $3 million. But after that, it gets kind of rough because in 2010 and 11, the annual county appropriation for current expense was reduced by 1%, like every other item in the budget was that year, down to $6.7 million. And the school board had to appropriate a little over $98,000 in fund balance to help balance the budget that year. That left them with a fund balance of about $2.9 million. Then in 11-12, the same $6.7 million was appropriated, and the school had to appropriate $1,646,000 from their fund balance to cover a current expense increase of $10,180,000, which left $1,284,000 in their budget. And the 12-13 budget that we're in now, it's not completed yet, of course, but the $6.9 million was put back in the budget. Expenditures are estimated to be $8.9 million, and the school had to appropriate $1,137,000 in their fund balance to help cover the additional costs of current expense, pretty much wiping out the fund balance that the school board has been able to accumulate since then. The proposed budget earmarks $7,118,330 in current expense, along with some other funds. And based on our discussions with the school board, it looks like their current expense estimate at this point in time is just a little over $9,160,000. The state appropriates money and the state takes away money. And we've been going through these reversions for several years now. We have in this current year, or proposed year, I think about a $25 million planning allotment for the schools and $1,096,000 reversion in there. And so that's going to take them down, based on what we know right now, to $24,393,000 in state funding for this coming year. Looking at the expenses and the revenues as they are, without a reduction in the expense portion of the education budget, we're looking at a shortfall of $1.355 million. In order to fund that with additional revenue, it would take a tax increase of $0.015 to generate that much revenue. In order to fund essential county services and meet the county's debt service obligation on capital projects, maintain critical needs in education, public safety, we've had to make some decisions and recommendations that prioritize and in many cases reduce departmental and agency budget requests for this year. There are many worthwhile and commendable projects and programs and services that have merit and still need to be funded and or implemented, but have not been included in this budget proposal due to lack of additional revenue. The original approved general fund budget for this year, 2012-2013, was $44,391,193. And due to continuing contracts, grants, additional revenue, and so forth, the revised budget for this year is now $48,007,997. And that's reflected because of one-time grants and so forth that will come back down as it always does. And I say that, as I said earlier, the proposed general fund budget for the fiscal year coming up July 1st is recommended at $46,643,716, which is less than the revised budget, but more than the budget that started out the prior year. The county general fund operating budget is balanced within existing revenues. The goal set by the Board of County Commissioners in January was to create a balanced budget without a tax increase. No property increase, no property tax increase is reflected or requested in this proposed budget. We have reduced requests for capital outlay. We have trimmed other expenses where feasible. And our goal has been over the past 5 years to try to maintain current level of services without additional county staff. We've been able to do that by leaving non-critical positions unfilled throughout county departments. We'll continue to fill only those essential positions when they become vacant. Our county employees have worked hard to do their job, and they continue to help us hold the line on spending while delivering essential county services. Macon County is indeed fortunate to have such dedicated and devoted employees. And the board earlier this year implemented a new classification pay plan. And I would say to you, Board of Commissioners, that your county employees are very grateful for the board's action in bringing our entry-level salaries up to minimum recruitment levels and adjusting fair compensation based on the market rate. Our self-funded insurance program continues to remain strong. We've not increased rates for employee dependent coverage in several years, and I think that's due to the fact that our claims experience has been very favorable. We're not proposing an increase in employee contributions at this time. To do this would sacrifice Macon County's grandfather status and result in a total higher cost for the county coverage because of tenets of the Affordable Care Act. If you increase rates more than 5%, you lose that grandfather status, and you're going to end up paying more in the long run. So what I'm recommending is that this will be reviewed again between now and January 2014, and if adjustments need to be made, they can be considered at that time when there is full implementation of the federal government's Affordable Care Act, and we'll see what happens when that comes around. Every year, county strives to improve our facilities, provide and maintain services while we recruit and retain qualified employees, and our goal has been on improving quality service for our citizens and our visitors too. We're committed to maintaining the county's leadership position in Western North Carolina. Macon County has a reputation of being a forward-thinking, progressive county that seeks to improve the quality of life while carefully balancing the needs of our citizens and the tax burden they are asked to bear. I believe this proposed county budget reflects that commitment. A full and complete list of line detail has been prepared that gives a thorough breakdown for each expenditure, appropriation, and revenue source. The state is still facing a budget crisis. The General Assembly is still in session, as we heard today, and we are concerned that the state could possibly shift additional responsibilities or reduce county funding to create their particular budget situation. We hope they will not do that, but we have been reassured by our legislators that the state will not balance their budget on the backs of counties this year. They seem to be trying to hold that pledge in most respects. I'm cautiously optimistic, to say the least. Funding for all outside agencies in our special appropriations budget remains at the current year level. And so, Chairman and Commissioners, the proposed budget for Macon County for fiscal year 2013-2014, as required by state statute, is balanced with revenues and expenditures of $46,643,716, and is hereby submitted for your review and consideration.
Sir?